That's a that's a long ass one there on on the pause. Good to see you, man. We made it to another Friday. I got a busy ass week. Just like it was just crazy, kind of all with Monday's thing, and then we got sheesh, what is it? The Halloween trick or trunks or something, trunk or treat. So up at the school at 5:30, and then come back, sleep, and then we're supposed to go to scout camp. So wake up at like 6 a.m., go out to scout camp, and then activity, sleep at night, be in the tent. The kids are excited, but it's raining right now, so they cancel it tonight. We'll see what happens. Come back Sunday, get ready for the week, and then back at it. So it feels like I'm just like one of those like no break burners. But I think the kids are gonna have a blast if we go. So it'll be a lot of fun. But what you been up to, man? How's life?
Life is good. Yeah, can't complain. Yeah, we have
Oh,
probably
but you
busy
can.
weekend. Yes, yeah. So I'm putting AI to the test. So I've never coached basketball before. So signed my son up for the league, and they messaged back that they were short three coaches, and essentially like, if you didn't have a team you're already like on and working with, and they didn't get the volunteers for the coaches, basically like 30 kids wouldn't be able to play. So I just raised my hand. I was like, yeah, I'll coach.
Man. How many nights a
It's
week?
maybe it's only one practice a week and then one
Okay.
game a week. So it's not too much. But I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then so essentially like say 9 other kids dreams of playing ball. So we're playing ball, but everything I've done, I've used AI. So let's see if I can like have a winning season and go undefeated, and credit it to ChatGPT.
Fantastic, dude. That I think is a perfect segue. So we got a couple things we're gonna talk about today. But like, I think I wanted to double click on kind of the rise of these. Let's say rise. So app launching platform and how important that is, like in Android or iOS and ChatGPT. So I've been doing some research. I listened to some podcasts. So they just really, I don't know. I just had this epiphany when I listened to it. So kind of the hypothesis here is like all the major tech companies have built platforms, and you've heard about network effects and things of that nature, but specifically app launching, and like you go to Google search to find the right thing so you can actually interact with the app that you're looking for, right? And so I kind of just went back. So there's like with Microsoft, there's Windows, right? And so they had the platform, but then installing Word and all those different tools. Then you have like iOS and Android, right? So they have a lot of functionality, but then you download a bunch of apps to use it, search, Google. And now we're coming like we had the browser, so Chrome, Chromebooks. And then now with the launch of OpenAI Atlas, their AI, and then Perplexity Comet, I'm sure Chrome's going to kind of come up with their stuff. I feel like we're now in this AI browser WeChat world where I was like, oh man, our lives are going to change. Like they've already started and we're never going back. I know that sounds crazy because like so much has changed, but just thinking about how like it's gonna re-architect everything we do, kind of like SEO re-architected how all websites are built and maintained. And just so the other flip side of that, and would love to get your thoughts on this kind of quote unquote like app launching disintermediation potential. So if ChatGPT slips in there and now you can go to, talk to it, book me a trip, pulls in booking.com, give me a planner, it goes to the travel website and gives you some recommendations for where you should eat, some things you might like based on your dietary restrictions because it knows all this stuff about you. Are you ever gonna go to, Google how do you make stroganoff again? Right? It's like it could just totally disintermediate so many things. I was like, oh man, I gotta talk to Doom about this. So yeah, so curious if you have any kind of thoughts on Atlas, if you've used it, this disintermediation, if you will, that's going on.
Yeah. No, I haven't used it, but the first thing I thought, and someone had shared it in our team Slack, and the first thing I said was, "Oh, I actually was talking with my buddy about this the other day, where I don't even use like Orbitz or Expedia anymore. I just go into Google Flights." But now, to your point, like now I'll just be like, cheapest, nonstop flight, AM flight to, from Honolulu to New York on May 17th. And, you just do your natural language prompt and it's going to be pull it up and be like, here's the nonstop flights leaving between 9 a.m. and, noon on the 17th. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy to think, but it's what we talked about last week. And I think, yeah, it's interesting. It's coming fast. And, I think things move extremely fast now, or faster than they did previously. What is it? Not Moore's theory, the every 2 years, or Moore's law. Because I think we've talked about this too, about like, okay, Uber came along, upset all the cabbies with medallions. They were like, yo, you can't do this. The cabbies like rallied and were like protesting Uber. I don't know if you've been to SF lately and you see Waymo and it's driving around, like everybody I know that lives in SF. And even when I'm there now, like I don't Uber, I Waymo. And so like, do we see the rise of like
Dude,
Uber
I can't.
drivers?
I can't
Like
do Waymo yet. Are you a Waymower? You get
I,
in?
and we don't have it here, but like when I'm in SF, yeah, like I find it fascinating. I mean, for the like novelty and all, but like it's super quick, right? Like arrival. But like, do we see Uber drivers become the new medallion holders and start protesting against Waymo? And where my reference is to your point, like things are moving quick. You know, it's changing and we're not going back. And it feels like the pace of that is increasing across like everything, not just like AI. Well, I guess Waymo is AI, but like,
It is changing so fast. So why don't we jump into some examples with Atlas and see if I can pull this together? I accidentally closed the tab on this, but the so I one thing I have to do for my kids is either at the beginning of the week, but I ask them every day, is go in, log in, pull what's for lunch today, what's for lunch this week. It's just kind of annoying because it's like it's not listed publicly, log in as guests and all this stuff. I was like, man, wouldn't it be kind of cool just to like ChatGPT, go to this website, log in as guest, change the school to this, we want lunch, and then tell me what's going on. So it's a combination of the text, the ask, and then the screen interaction and browser. And so I'm going to share this real quick. It is so I'm trying so I couldn't get it to work at first. So like I'm trying to tell it to go here, and it's fighting me. So I wasn't able to locate for today. Would you like to the archive? It's like no. So this isn't going to be a great real time demo. But then I tried it again this morning, and a little bar shows up here on the right, and it's thinking and pixelating and moving the mouse around, and so it actually worked once. So I was like, this is pretty crazy. It's like you got kids. Hey, so and so, can you run to my office and on the third shelf grab the widget and bring it back to me? And now it's like on digital worlds, you could just tell your agent to be like, hey, do the thing. And so there's an option with Atlas. You can say, do it as like a logged out version of me or a logged in. So like you could say, yes, you can, essentially I'm giving you IAM permissions to log into Google and then search my Gmail and then give me my answer. So I was pretty blown away. Another example from Greg Eisenberg on one of a recent podcasts he did or joined was shopping. And then he said on ChatGPT, are there any active coupon codes for this website? And then it gave him an active coupon code. And so he got a discount. I was like, that's pretty crazy. So it's not prime time, but like I can see where it's going, and it is such a trip. Like our lives are going to be completely different in 2 years, like on how we interact with like websites and browsers.
oh yeah, yeah, completely. Yeah. I mean, uh, coupon one is an example, but even like without the agent or the browser, because yeah, I did very similar with like our recent trip to Disneyland. I was like, hey, what discounts are available for booking at Disneyland hotel, and it went and pulled a bunch, and it shared like the codes and everything. So it's super fascinating, and yeah, it's crazy how fast and fun it's moving, but it's still interesting. I talk to a lot of people, like they don't use it like we do. So it's still, I think, very in the infancy of like I guess there's like nerds or technologists like us that like are still geeking out, and I guess we're in our echo chambers of sorts.
Yeah, totally. So Atlassian, the makers of Jira and Confluence, are feeling pressure. They bought Loom as well. They bought the browser company for this product for 600, I think $50 million in cash, not stock, cash, which apparently is only 20% of their free cash flow for the year, so it's not like that expensive. But this, it's called chat, Dia or yeah, Dia browser, interact with your tabs. And it's crazy. So like this example here is, imagine being in Gmail, you highlight something and then you just ask a chat. And so it knows what you're highlighting and interacting with it, make it sound better instead of this copy and paste and going back and forth. And so that's where I was just like, geez, man, this is just going to change everything. And the best example or analogy I had was, what Google search did and how it rewarded companies that optimized their website, you know, re-architected SEO. The same thing's going to happen. It's not real clear what the lean-in's going to be, but websites that can interact, or it's easier for ChatGPT to comb and integrate and interact with, are going to be rewarded heavily in the short term, even if they get disintermediated and disrupted later. Right now, but everyone else is going to fall behind. So I don't know, it blew my mind in the last like 24 hours, man. So I just had to share this. So, but then the good thing is like Chrome's going to do this. There's going to be Dia's doing it. There's a lot of fast follows. So I think it's going to be good for everybody. And there's going to be a lot of competition. But man, again, it comes back to memory and context, as it seems to be the moat here, is like the more that a provider knows about you, the better they're going to be able to make recommendations to your style and what you like. And so it's just it's a flywheel, and that's how you differentiate, right? The more interactions and reps you have and data you have on a user, it's just going to get, stickier and stickier.
Percent. I mean, I don't want, I sort of feel bad for, and I know you said, who was the one that just bought them? Loom?
Atlassian just bought
Oh,
Loom maybe
okay. Yeah,
last
yeah,
year. And then, yeah.
yeah. And they bought that. That was probably, and this is just off the one example you gave, but that was probably a bad investment because you made the example of like, oh, if you're in Gmail, you can ask it to like respond to this. I use Gemini. Gemini has a built-in for your Gmail now,
Yeah.
and it actually works really, really well. Like, cause it reads the whole email thread and then it like responds back. So yeah, you know, I wonder how many winners outside of like, the OpenAI and the Googles will actually exist. Cause yeah, like to your example, like Google is just layering it in on everything, you know, it's, it's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
It's so the big labs are obviously are ChatGPT, Anthropic, and then DeepMind at Google, right? And so I think Gemini is going to do well. So if we pivot kind of to the second topic, right, which begs the question, because of this whole AI hype cycle, but really, how are these companies going to make money? Are they making real money? And so I was thinking through some of these things, back to the same kind of network and platforms, Microsoft Windows, Apple iOS, Android, operating system, Google Search, and Google Chrome. So some of these in the meta Facebook, right, the social graph, Microsoft made it on software and then got into devices. Apple made it on devices initially, and then really started to like platform out. So like you're hooked on your iPhone. Okay, well, this works so well. Let me get a Mac. Then they tie it all together with iCloud. I got into services in the App Store. Google branched out of search and launched Gmail, and then Google Workspaces, Google Cloud. So and then but Facebook is still 100% ad revenue. So let me pull this up. So I had to throw some stuff together with Gamma, just taking the data here. And so I just pulled down the revenue breakdowns. So for Microsoft, right, they're a mature business. So like 35% comes from server tools, 31% comes from Office 365, and then you have a pretty long tail. So they're charging money and they make a little bit off of LinkedIn advertising. Apple, mostly iPhone over 50%. We got products and services, 25. So it's still pretty healthy. Alphabet's pretty good too, but still 56% of Alphabet's revenue is from Google search, right? So I think that's a little bit at risk. And then Meta is like almost 99%, which was really surprising to me for some reason. I was like, oh, they have glasses.
Yeah.
But the my point here is if there's no cost for the product or service, that means you're the product, right? That's what they're selling and that's advertising. So, it's interesting for ChatGPT, kind of the three business models I'm seeing is one, I pay $20 a user. That's B2C. I think that's great. Then you have the B2B angle on the API side. So like, you're selling tokens, you're charging per token, it's embedded in applications, right? And then the third one is, which they haven't started, but with the launch of Sora 2 and that whole, kind of social media-esque area, like it begs like, since you're not paying for that, it's going to be advertising. So I'm kind of encouraged that maybe they won't sell all our data. It won't be advertising, but it'll actually be a commercial agreement. But it kind of also puts the risk at like, if you are an advertising company, like, can Meta be disintermediated by OpenAI? It's like, I don't know. I never would have thought so until, kind of doing some of these analysis. So do you have, what are your thoughts, man?
I mean, I know that everybody says, how are they going to make money? And I mean, I pay for GPT and Gemini, and I have no intent of canceling either, just because I find both
Damn.
super useful. And maybe again, maybe it's the nerd in me and
I don't
just
know why that
enjoy it.
makes me laugh, dude.
But yeah, I have like no intent. But then if you think about it, so like you made the analogy of like, oh, hey, Microsoft has Windows or, services and let's go pre SaaS days. So if I'm paying $20 a month for GPT or Gemini, either or, that's $240 a year. And where you think about it, I don't know if you remember, like I used to build like computers as like a side hobby project, and then family members would like say, hey, can you build me one? And so I'd go buy all of it and then put it together. And then I always had to tell them, hey, we need, Windows. And they're like, oh, how much is that? And I'm like, oh, $500. And they're like, what? Like, I thought it was just a computer. And you're like, no, you got to pay for the operating system. Where I'm going with this, though, I was like, and then you'd get your Windows license, but you'd be good for 4 years, right? Nobody would upgrade to the new Windows. They just let it go. And whereas like they get 240 from me every year,
Office
you know,
365 comes in. Subscriptions, baby. They're so sticky. They're so good.
yeah, but you're still paying for it, right? And so like, I don't know, like, maybe not everybody's going to use it like we do, but I don't know. It feels like I think there's, and maybe it is B2B. I find it very useful, but
I think you're
yeah,
right. I was just doing the math on your numbers there, right? So they're chasing that 1 billion daily active users. So obviously that would be $250 billion if you monetize everyone at $20, but they're not. But there's also the $200 per month, and then maybe they're going to get 2,000 per month, which is kind of what terrifies me is like only the elite are going to have access to all these like agents and they're going to get all the like productivity gains. But that's my conspiracy theory. We'll put that to the side. So I just said 20% of a billion users times $240, right? So that's still 48 billion per year. And I don't know what the good metric. Maybe you argue it's only 5% of the total, but you also need to put up. But just dude, I mean, what are they at? 10 billion now? Like 48 billion if they could just monetize that. So it doesn't feel like a reach. So I don't worry so much about the bubble. I think they're gonna make their money. I can see it more now with this browser. It's just fundamentally gonna shift how everything works together.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think too, like, and I'm sure that there's been areas, and I may be just talking over my skis here, but like, I think I shared with you, like, I built certain, the agents or tasks within GPT to help me and my son. So like I built like a Socratic thinking. So like if you're familiar with
Cool.
like the Socratic questioning about how that works, like the Socratic school of thought and
I'm
questioning.
pretty basic, man. I just do the 5 whys.
Yeah, very similar. But yeah, but very similar. So my instructions were like, anytime he asks you a question, you have to probe on him in the Socratic method to make him think deeper about the question he's asking to see if it will lead him. So very similar, like 5 whys. But where I'm going with this is like, yeah, the expansion just into schools where I think schools, like we already toured one school last year that they were using it for art, but where, you know, they're, subscribing, because every kid has ChatGPT or whatever, model it is.
So
But I think schools,
they're embedding the offering of ChatGPT into their service because like they're using it anyways. So they're kind of adding their value add around that. Is that what you're saying? Or
well,
tweaking
no,
it?
I'm saying like, I think schools will start like adopting like, how Microsoft, got into schools and everybody used Windows growing up. I think it'll be very similar to like whatever model wins, but schools will have it because I think they'll ultimately see it as a tool. Like, and the example I was giving, I was like, you build a Socratic agent, so your English class or whatever, and you're typing into it, and it's like, well, this isn't really correct. So what could have you done here? And it'll be that teacher's aid.
Totally. I've been trying to lean in more. It's honestly for me, it's the cognitive like restraint. I don't know why. Like sometimes I don't want to ask it a question or I don't know. There's something that kind of like hesitant. So I've been trying to force myself to just ask, see what happens, because I feel like I need to massage the question or can't formulated it. And it's kind of liberating when you just keep asking it, and it kind of helps get to where you're going. And it's like, man, that would have taken me way longer to figure out on my own. So I probably just saved 30 minutes on this little trivial question. It's pretty fascinating. So
Dude. Yeah.
go good.
One example, sorry, dude. Yeah, to your point, like just asking questions. So our washer has been leaking and I've been like lazy because it's still washing, but it leaks. And finally the other night I was like,
What do you
oh,
do with the water?
I did just, well, ours is outside. So it just like
Oh,
runs.
okay.
But finally I was like, oh, I've got multiple loads. I got to do this. I should call the guy, to get him out here. But it was like 9 o'clock at night. And so I was like, hey, ChatGPT, my washer's leaking. What's the problem? And it's like, oh, it could be da 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 da. And then at the very end, it was like, but if you can tell me the make and model, I could give you some troubleshooting reasons. So I was like, oh, it's a front loader, da, da, da. And it's like, okay, typically here are the number one, three top reasons. And, it's like, try this for first. And so I was like, clean the rim, the plastic rim and pull it out. You got to pull it out, pull all this gunk out. And
Right.
that should solve it. And boom, sure
It
enough,
worked.
it worked. Didn't have to call
Hey,
me.
just saved you $250
Yeah.
minimum.
And I didn't have to sit there and go through 100 different Reddits and read all the like
Or
like,
those fucking websites with like the PDFs, or like they're like pretend to be a forum with questions and answers, but really they're just like the front end of a handyman like network on the back end, which handyman are way and women way worth their time and energy, but it's just like they give you the half answers, or like, well, in general, it works like this. You're just like, no, like I gave you the model, I gave you this, and then tell me how I fix it. ChatGPT here to save the day. It rides in on their horse.
pretty much. Yeah. So, yeah. But I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but to your point, like we're just using it and like asking it questions and getting places that you probably couldn't have gotten as fast as you did.
Exactly. So there's things like, I mean, so there's so much value. So they're just gonna shift the value capture, charge more somehow. I see like there's just too much value being created for them not to make it. There's a really interesting conversation on the unsolicited feedback podcast, and because I think these guys are more in the B2C phase, like networking kind of aspects. So they were comparing. They had an X and Y graph on Y was production value. Sorry, X was a production value, and then X was social engagement. And the hypothesis here, which I found pretty fascinating for some reason, but just probably because it's so simple, and I mean, we just really like elegant solutions are always so cool. So typically, humans engage because like socially, production like quality is really high. So you watch Netflix because it's entertaining and it looks nice and aesthetic. It doesn't mean you were, in World War II because you watched a documentary or a drama based on that, right? Another reason you'd watch something is because it's hyper relevant. Your friend posted something, you went to the same university, right? You know each other, you're sending funny messages or DMs. And so they had this kind of sliding scale where like on the top of social engagement was like Snapchat, and then kind of all the way down and to the right on no social engagement, like you don't know anybody, but production's high is like movies, right, or IMAX or something like that. And so kind of in between was TikTok. And so the hypothesis here with Sora too specifically is they were aiming for TikTok, so lots of good amount of production value and social engagement. They're actually way closer to Snapchat, and so like which is more equivalent. What they're seeing is a really, really long tail of engagement, which is more akin to direct messages, which nobody really monetizes direct messages. I still don't understand why Meta bought Facebook or WhatsApp. I mean, but so it was kind of interesting. So it's like, they basically said, look, we're power users. It's, invite only, but still free. They have to be losing dollars per day. So like, yeah, that use case, probably, but that they're kind of still testing the market and they can shut it down. But in general, it just seems it blows my mind how fast OpenAI is building, how much they're building, and how successful. And they cited like the top apps in the App Store are still like ChatGPT and Sora 2. And it's just like, who has done that in the last decade to have the top two apps in the App Store consistently over time? So that was definitely a tangent, but I would highly recommend go check out, YouTube Unsolicited Feedback Podcast. Brian, I forget his last name. It was super engaging, super insightful.
No, I could definitely see the marketing teams or just any business for the Zora. Like I've had a couple of acquaintances I know that are using it, and now because it has that little like logo in the right hand corner.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah, there's like a little water stamp. But yeah, they've been posting videos, and I'm not putting myself out there like they do, but like they're you know they're doing it and they're like, oh, did you hear this? Blah blah blah. But I think it is fascinating. I think to your point, like it's at like short form, like digestible. But I think marketing can do it. So it's like, Nike no longer has to pay like a Mr. Beast influencer. They can spin up 100 Mr. Beasts and be like, hey, let's deploy all these like TikTok ads of like these street ballers that don't really exist or whatever, the thing
Yeah.
is that they're doing, and can pretty much do it within a few lines of like, hey, create this video based on this. And then it's marketing. So you could get marketing or businesses to pay for that, I believe.
I agree with you. I think their hypothesis was like how it was going to be along the sliding scale. But then one hypothesis was like, actually, I just think these tools are just going to increase the production. Like it's going to shift right. So just everything's going to get a higher quality. Like the floor and production volume, or sorry, value is just going to go up for everything from Snapchat all the way to Netflix, which I agree with. So I think, I mean, they're already doing that, right? They're the AI models and all this stuff that's so crazy. And we'll go down that rabbit hole of like, relationships and because the whatever the explicit stuff. But anyways, so we'll just pivot right to the last topic. So kind of talked about the AI bubble, but there's some interesting stats on AI adoption. Ramp Economics Lab. I'm just going to throw this up. There's a couple interesting slides here, charts, not slides. And then I do have a gamma. You see my screen? Oh yeah, okay. I'm looking at what I'm sharing. It's a little weird. All right, so this was kind of interesting to me. This adoption, Feb 2025. So this year we went from 25% over to 40%. So 15%. I mean, that's like a 50% growth in year of usage. So this is the model adoption rate. Check out Ramp Economics Lab Substack to kind of hear more about the research and how they get the data. But that was overall a big jump. So the comment here was actually September consumption dipped, and they found it was like mostly in SMBs. So it's like, oh wow, are we in a bubble? Now they're going to go back down. But then there's two more points here. There might be a dip because things are getting stickier. So back in 2022, 100% retention. In January, 12 months later, it's down to 50%. But in 2024 and 2025, we're hovering for average at least above 80%. I mean, so that's a massive increase in just a short couple of years. And then lastly, I think this is the most, you know, poignant data set on why we're not in a bubble. The deal sizes are, growing. And I'm definitely seeing this in my business. So going from 39K in 2023 to an expected 1 million in 2026, right? And so I think there is like a lot of testing, a lot of sampling, a lot of this, and then we're kind of coming out the other side like, okay, something's working here, and our consumption's growing, and so we're gonna double our budget. And I think that's a telling sign. And then lastly, so I'll just pause there. So any of this kind of stick out to you, shock you?
Makes me think we should go work for like some of
A
these,
lab?
what are these providers? Because if you think about this, like the 1 million consumption, and I'm assuming, I'm trying to read this real quick. Like they're saying these companies will be consuming $1 million worth of AI workloads. Am I reading that
I
correctly?
think it's more like a committed contract. So they're basically
Yeah.
saying we're gonna do $1 million over the next year, over the next 3 years, right? Whatever
Yeah.
they're committing to that to get a
Yeah. So,
discount.
yeah. So even at that, that's what, 83K a month. And let's just call it, you know,
Yep.
MRR, whatever. But yeah,
How many
committed contract.
tokens is that?
But if you think about it, like, I mean, that's realistic too for like series A, B, and up. And those were typical like workload sizes you would see, speaking from my days at AWS, of like what consumption would look like when we were working with like series A and B teams of like 83 to 100K a month and just their AWS consumption. And we're talking like that's their workload that keeps things moving. Now we're just talking strictly about the AI being that workload size.
Exactly. It's skewing probably enterprise, and so I think we could maybe talk about the shape of the AI spends, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is an ISV that's built AI native like a Lovable is going to I think their architecture and their spend is going to have a very different profile from maybe a more traditional Salesforce or SaaS, right? Or and even like an analytics company, like a lot of security ISVs ingest massive amounts of data, and so they have a ton of pipelines, a ton of analytics, a lot of machine learning, and then AI is kind of sitting on top of that to act as like a multi-layer, both first summarization, then like kind of recommendations on detection, triage, and then remediation, right? Versus like a Canva or Figma with like their image video creation, like that takes so many more tokens, but they still have to support all the compute of the rendering. So yeah, it depends. Versus the JP Morgan will look a little different, but kind of maybe rambling there, but specifically on industries. So I love me some gamma. So
Mm.
adoption is not this. I can't fucking talk today. The adoption of AI is not the same across all industries, which I thought, and there's some pretty big swings here. So that's why I thought it was interesting. So a couple of things here. So the technology sector dominates 73% of tech companies. Not surprising at all. I think someone quoted basically the first real AI industry is code generation. Like that's the first real legitimate one that has a sizable TAM. So, and everybody's doing a Cursor, a Copilot, a Claude Code, Codex, Gemini, AI Studio, whatever you call it. So financial services, I was a little surprised, but I guess not, shouldn't be given all of their investments in analytics and tech and cloud, 58%. Again, probably a lot of white collar jobs in here. But then you start getting into the other industries. So retail drops to 34%. Construction, I was actually surprised. Construction has highly fragmented and it has is low tech is not the best way to put it. Low digital tech, very complex OT operational technology. And then lastly is, food service, which I think we still like talking to humans. We order food, but maybe we shouldn't, in case you're gonna spit in it. So yeah, that was kind of, I thought, interesting on the takeaway. Like not, the fruits are not evenly distributed, but it kind of lines up with some general technology adoption trends, just like the East Coast and the West Coast typically adopt first, and then it kind of trickles into Texas and Chicago.
Yep. Yeah. And the financial services, I don't know if I sent you the one poster, if you saw it across your radar, but like Goldman Sachs was working with OpenAI, but they talk about how they are basically automating and building, agents or service. They can do 95% of the work that's needed to, structure an IPO. And then there was like a spin-off article where they were talking to OpenAI and how they were doing this. And I guess OpenAI has hired a bunch of like analyst bankers, just Wall Street type to, private equity, and are paying him $150 an hour to help build these models. And my internal like joke or, painful joke is like all these individuals that have been hired on by OpenAI are basically have been digging their own grave, and that's the last 150-hour job they'll ever have.
Yeah, it's hard not to have mixed feelings about that. And so what's interesting, I have a lot of great comments on that. I hope, for our kids' sake, right? For our sake, that, there are jobs out there, to build on top of all this stuff. What I would say, it is from a purely academic point of view, it's kind of interesting to see, like, this is Anthropic. And so Anthropic's done really well on the coding benchmarks. So I guess I'm struggling on zooming in. So they came out with this article after they released 4.5, Building AI for Cyber Defenders. And so they've kind of got the code generation crown right now, although it is still very competitive with GPT-5 and Gemini. But, just to your point, OpenAI is kind of doubling down on financial services in the IPO market. Anthropic seems to be tackling a little bit more around cybersecurity, which I thought was kind of interesting. And so we're learning more as it comes out. But this is pretty fascinating too, because there's so much data generated by cybersecurity firms, just given all the telemetry coming off your phone, your network, your applications, like everything that happens that has to be analyzed, and you can't miss it because there might be a threat there. So I just thought I'm looking forward to actually seeing that, just how many bad actors are out there today.
Like bad actors will at Spawn when you can ask it as a bad actor, like, here's where they're looking. What are my opportunities here?
It's so bad. So one of my customers used the recent incident to pretend to be part of the hyperscaler company and say, we're from the support team, we're calling you, is anything going on? And so their CISO was like, hey, FYI, we have at least one known incident. So the phishing, the deep fake, all of that stuff, like, it's already happening. And what's interesting is the shape of the data set. So it used to be like a year ago, the number of attacks, I think, was a little higher, but they were more concentrated in like the top 3 or top 5 kind of known nation states or criminal organizations. Now we're seeing a flattening of the curve in the sense of number of organizations. So the top actors are actually just new. And so it's pretty terrifying. So that's why I'm hoping this happens, because, like, and typically cyber criminals don't go where it's hard, they go where it's easy. But yeah, so we definitely want the good guys to win in this.
Yeah, it's fascinating times.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there'll be another announcement next week we can talk about. So maybe we'll just end it there. And
Yep.
thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.